Hello, welcome to Brown Dog Gadgets Live. I'm Amanda, the Education Outreach Coordinator here at Brown Dog Gadgets. Behind the camera with all the sound effects and the coding knowledge, we've got Pete.
Here.
He's down below now.
Wait, I'm going to move over here.
I know, you're going to have to move yourself again later when we look at code.
I have another camera view, so I think I won't have to move myself.
You trying to be fancy?
Yeah.
I like it.
Fancy.
Today we're going to talk more about MicroBit.
Ooh.
Yes, this is the giant fake one. Yep, 3D printed. Thanks to Pete.
That one's large, and then the
this
one is going to be huge.
Yeah, this is the large one, so none of them are giant, is what you're telling me.
Not yet. I basically, Josh tells me to make something, and I come up with a name, and then that's what I have to refer to it as, so it makes sense with all my files.
Large MicroBit.
That one's large, yeah.
With buttons that press but don't do anything because it's
not yet.
Fake.
Mine's going to do something.
They have to do something,
Yeah,
right? Toggle through for us or something?
I was going to add a piezo so it can beep.
There we go. I like it. Yeah.
Okay.
Before we jump into our MicroBit University and MicroBit Basics session today, if you have not followed us on our social media platforms, please do so. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, and YouTube. Also, the guides that we're going to be discussing today are all on browndoggadgets.com. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions as we're streaming, please let us know. Jump in the chat. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions after we are done, feel free to email us at help@browndoggadgets.com. Now, before we jump into MicroBit Basics, I do want to do a quick plug for something called Pathfinder's Summer Institute. This is a free summer PD for educators. You do have to be a public or charter educator in the United States. And for our session, you do need to be 4th grade through 12th grade. But we will be doing a free microbit and robotics and circuitry session. It's 40 hours of professional development. We send you a big old box of stuff and you build and create along with us. We'll be on Zoom for those times, and it is a great time. You get to really interact with our products and understand how to use them. The great thing is, this is definitely going to be a large part of that Pathfinders Institute with these MicroBit Basics and then moving into robotics. It's just giving us a great place to kind of start the MicroBit knowledge. So if you're interested in signing up for that, like I said, it is free. I have been scanning through emails and going crazy, getting people signed up. We're already at 35 participants, and we can only take 50 as of right now. Hopefully they will extend that for us. But if you're interested, please jump on to, where's the link? There it is.
Yeah.
Pete made a short link for me. It's p2url.com/Pathfinders. You can also search Pathfinders Summer Institute 2025. And you can find it that way. When you create an account on Pathfinders online, you will need to find our session. That is one thing that people have been struggling with. So if you look at that image up top, that's what our session looks like. And then on the far right side there's a red arrow pointing to it, is a half circle. You have to click that to scroll over in the carousel to be able to find our session. It is what it is. Come find us. Sign up. We'd love to have you. Awesome. We're going to jump into our MicroBit Basics session today with 4 LEDs.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
You want to do this? Yeah.
All right. So this is what we're going to set up today. We've done 2 sessions so far. The first one was the MicroBit with 1 LED. And then we did 2 LEDs. And now we're doing 4. So you can see the options are limitless. Just add more pathways and maybe a bigger base plate.
We'll be moving on to 2 base plates fairly soon. But
awesome. Yeah. So you'll see that. So we've got 4 different LEDs. Pete does have 4 different colors on here because I believe the starter set comes with 1 of each color, correct?
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. So that was your reasoning behind using 4 different colors.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're going through everything in the kit. Mm-hmm. So Josh said, there's 1 of each color. They don't have like 4 reds. So just use 1 of each for this.
And then you'll notice he did not use a little light blue Lego risers this time. Why not, Pete?
I needed more room for tape.
That's true.
So
that's fair.
Yeah.
The tape paths are a little bit more elaborate on this. We've got the red LED hooked up to pin 1, green is at pin 2, blue is at pin 3, and white at pin 4. I'm going to start actually getting the tape paths on my new one here because I do think it's beneficial to kind of see that. However, while I'm doing that, I would love for you to explain your reasoning behind pin 3 and 4 and what I think it's 3 and 4, and what you have to do with them to make sure that we can actually use an LED with pins 3 and 4.
And we'll look at it in the code, but hey, move that large microbit back into the shot. So if you look on there, you'll see that 0, 1, and 2 are those big sort of connectors. Yeah, on the small board they're made of metal. But you can always connect to those and use them. Those are always available as input pins. When we look at pins 3 and 4 and a whole bunch of other ones, and we'll have a link to this.
Which are these little tiny lines in between.
Yeah, each one of those is what we call a pin. And they represent an input or output to the microbit. So the thing is, like you'll see how we have that little animation running on our LED matrix on the front. That LED matrix uses a bunch of the pins. So like it uses pins 3 and 4 and 6 and 7, I think 9. It doesn't use 8, so we used 8 I think last week for my LED.
Oh, for 2 LEDs.
Yeah. That's a way to also avoid conflicting with the LED matrix. So one of the things we'll see is that sometimes we disable that matrix. We basically turn it off. When we turn it off, we say we're not going to be using it in this code. And what that does is it lets those pins be used for other things. So for buttons or servos or LEDs or whatever. So that's kind of what's going on there. So as we use 3 and 4, we have to disable that. Now, I didn't use 5, and there's a reason for that. If you look at the microbit laying there, it has an A button and a B button. That A button is actually connected to pin 5. So if you press that button, it's the same as connecting a external button and to pin 5 and pressing it. There is a weird issue though, because that pin is set as an input by default. When you connect an LED to it, it doesn't quite work right. I can't remember if it kind of shows up kind of dim or something else kind of strange, but there's a weird conflict there which you can't really get rid of because it's that built-in button. And the other button, button B, I believe is pin 11. So sometimes we will make projects that use pin 5 or pin 11 for a button, and you can alternately press button A or B on the microbit.
Awesome.
All right, should I keep going?
That's great.
Still taping.
Right now I'm just running the tape paths. It's pretty basic. It's very similar, or it really truly is the same as we did for one LED and for 2 LEDs. It's just a more elaborate tape path. That is all it is.
Yeah. And you don't have to follow the exact thing I did. If you've got a large base plate, those like 12-inch by 12-inch ones or whatever, and you can run your tape wherever. You can get creative with it. You can. I wanted to have the LEDs spaced out a little bit, so and I've done this, I guess, hundreds of times by now. So I kind of like that even spacing on the LEDs, and then I just move them far enough away from the bit board so you've got room to run those pieces of tape horizontally, as it were. So
absolutely.
I've done a lot of planning out of that kind of stuff.
You really have. So what I've done so far is I've hooked up 2 LEDs. I am not going to make you sit there and watch me do all 4.
Right.
It is basically the same thing going forward because we already have this one set up. But you'll see that I have my ground comes from that white hole on the side there that's labeled GND. That ground is connected to a white hole on each of the LEDs. and then we come out the colored hole or the black hole on the LEDs that lead to those specific pins that we're using. So making sure that those components have the polarity going the correct way is super important. They will not work if they are not correctly connected.
That's a diode for you. It only allows current to flow in one direction.
There you go.
And one thing I should note, I know somewhere on Dozuki we do have a, on our guide site, a piece of it's Lego base plate graph paper. So if you print it out, it's basically like a base plate, but on paper.
Yeah.
You can use that to sort of put the components on top of it in the bitboard and sort of draw out your paths.
And plan it.
Yeah. Because if you start just taping down, you realize, I don't have room to add this other one. That can be a problem.
But the great thing with Maker Tape is you can just pull it back up and do it again.
Yeah, it's easy to peel up off the plate and stick down again.
So if I actually pull these LEDs off, you can see the actual pathways. Like I said, I'm not redoing the whole thing. But there are the actual pathways. It's pretty basic. And then we're just connecting each LED to those pathways. Making sure to bridge that gap. And then each individual LED is connected to the ground as well.
Yep.
There we go. All right, let's check out our first code. So our first MicroBit is going to be blink alternately. So I'm going to put my MicroBit in, but I have not given it power yet. I'm going to attach a little battery pack. You'll see that this side actually has two little silver pieces. It's also bumpy. That's going to be facing up. There we go. And then I'm just going to slide it right onto those two pins. There we go.
You got it.
So Pete, tell us a little bit about this one.
All right. We're over here. Okay. So we're on chapter 3 now, right? It's our third week of this, and this is blink alternately. So we're going to look at that one. Again, this is what you just saw, what you just did. It's so weird with that PDF. Okay, we did all that. Let's look at the code. So this code, again, is very, very simple. If we take a look at it, it's almost the same as when we had one LED blinking. I think the only change here is maybe the addition of these variables. So we're setting pause time and 1 and pause time 2, and then dropping those in here. I think last time what we were doing is typing numbers directly into that pause statement. So here we're just using variables, and you can change those here. And again, it seems simple as like, well, I can just type it in right there. You can, but as you build more advanced code and you use variables in more than one place, you don't want to go all over your code having to retype numbers. You want sort of one simple place you can make a change.
So a really easy way to start teaching kids about variables that can affect their coding long term, for sure.
You got it. I don't know, that's all I got on that one.
Awesome. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that one.
Well, and then
really
you did
simple.
the LED enabled false, because that turns off the LED matrix on the screen too,
sorry,
correct?
You're right. Yeah, we did that as well. Otherwise, if we didn't have that, you'd see, and actually do this. If you pull out the power and plug it in real quick, see what happens. So you see that those two LEDs on 3 and 4 light up right away. So that's because they're getting power, because those pins are they're powered before it even starts to run the code and tells it to disable that LED matrix.
Got it.
So you will see that, because it's just as soon as it gets power, it's that quarter of a second before it starts running the code.
Yeah.
You'll see those light up. So,
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so that is blink alternately. The next one we have, our guide B, is blink sequentially.
Yeah, sequentially.
And it did it again, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna do that every time. So again, this stuff you've all seen. Let's get to that code. And this code it's a little more complex. Basically, instead of turning all of them on, we're walking through it. So we're turning on pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, pin 4 with that pause time between each one. So you see that's why they're kind of going in sequence. And we did a few more interesting things here. So after they all turn on, they're all going to turn off. We're going to set those all to 0. And then we're going to have that pause time again. Now, we're actually going to change things a little bit because we're going to change our pause time by time amount. And if you remember the change by earlier, we could type in a positive number or a negative number to increase or decrease it. Well, when you use a variable here, you can't really type negative and then put the variable in there. But what you can do is use that negative when you create the variable. So time amount is set to -10. So every time it gets down here, it's going to change the amount of pause time by -10, or it's going to subtract 10.
Okay.
So it's going to keep doing that.
We're in milliseconds, correct?
Yes, 10 milliseconds, correct. So every time it goes around, it's going to do that. It won't do this if statement until that pause time is less than 10. So it starts at 250, it subtracts 10 on every time around the loop. And help me out, what's the math on that? After 25 times?
Right. That's correct.
I'm really terrible at math.
Yeah. You just drop a 0. That's all you got to do to divide by 10.
I'm bad at math.
Yeah.
But when that happens, when that if statement is true, that conditional statement, it's going to set that pause time back to 250, back to our original. Now, I say back to our original, it's going to set it to 250, which is the same thing we set it to here. Now, if we used another variable, like say the value, and set it here instead of 250 and here instead of 250, then we would be able to set that 250 in just one place.
Okay.
So here's what I'm talking about, where if you change it here, you're not changing it here. So it's an initial value. Is that too confusing?
No.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Okay.
And,
it's
still base level here.
Yeah, sometimes I've written so much code, I'm like, does this make sense to normal people, or is it too confusing?
That made sense.
So as you can see with the LEDs, they're sequentially turning on, and they get slightly faster because we're lowering that time that it pauses. You want to guess what would happen if we put a positive number here, if we did 10 instead of -10?
It would get longer.
It would get slower.
Oh,
Slower?
the pauses would be longer. Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sequence of LEDs would get slower and slower and slower over time. And then we'd have to change this to say like, oh, and when it's greater than some number, then reset it.
Right.
So, because it would never get lower. So again, there's no really complex math in here because, hey, even I can figure this stuff out. But yeah, that is a really simple sort of, sequence of LEDs.
It's pretty cool. And I like the fact that you don't just have them sequentially lighting up. I like the change in time. It makes it a little more engaging and interesting to look at, and more complex in the coding aspect, where you could just do the sequential lighting and leave it at that, or kids can add on that timed factor as well.
Yeah, and I set it to, I think so it's going to look at when it's less than 10. I mean, you'll see it get pretty fast.
It goes really
at
fast.
The end. If you set this to like 1, you'd see them almost just all blinking on and off as fast as possible, because that code is just going to run with no delay in it anywhere. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, so that is code B, that's blink sequentially. Take that guy out. Next up is blink randomly.
All right, so this one again, everything's the same here. Here's our code. And again, I'm breezing over this, but there's plenty of info here that is pretty much what we're talking about, but in text form. Okay, so this one, once again, we're going to turn off that LED matrix that's built in on the front of the MicroBit. We're going to set our pause time to 1,000 milliseconds, or 1 second. So this time, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have something called which LED. This is a variable, and we didn't even set it here. We're just going to set it here. There's no reason to set it here. It's going to get changed every time we run through this. But The first thing it's going to do is set which LED to, it's going to pick a random number between 1 and 4. So it's going to pick 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then we've got this sort of if-else block. So it's not just an if-then, but it's an if-else. So it's going to test all these conditions. So let's say it runs through this and it picks number 4. So the first thing I'll do is look at this if statement and say, is which LED equal to 1? Well, it's not, so let's try 2. No. 3. Nope. 4. Hey, it's equal to 4. So at that point, we're going to turn on digital pin 4, which is our 4th LED. It's going to let it stay on for how long? 1 second. And then it's going to turn them all off. Now, we just turned them all off because we're not tracking which one we turned on. Mm-hmm. We could certainly add that in there. We could add variables in there, or we could add code into each one of these blocks that would turn it on and then pause. But this is just the way we did it. And that's kind of the fun part to me of writing this code is like, let's take that pause block, let's put it under all those ifs and see if it works the same or if something different happens. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of that. Now we have one more fun thing down here. Instead of pausing our normal amount, we're going to pause our pause time divided by 2. So this just shows how you can drop a simple math function in anywhere. So anywhere you could put a number or a variable that is a number, you could do some math on it. So I could multiply it by 2 or 5 or divide it by whatever. And that's just an easy way to say half the amount of time of pause time.
Yeah.
So that's that one. Now, there's one more fun thing. If you have been watching the LEDs blink, you may have seen occasionally it will do, let's say the green one, and then do the green one again. And you're like, well, that's not random. Well,
but it is.
Yeah. It is. It's random. Random's really weird when it comes to microcontrollers and computers. Often we call it pseudo-random. It's not true random. True random exists typically in nature, not as much in computers. And often, I know with the Arduino, there was an issue with if you just used the random function, mm-hmm. it would create a string of numbers that were the same each time. Oh. Somehow they'd still be random, but each time you like powered on the device, but it would be a constant like string each time. There's ways to get around that by what was called seeding a random value. So you'd do you'd read one of the pins and get a value, and then use that to seed the values. It's kind of weird. Now, we could make it so it doesn't do like the green one and then the green one again. We'd have to do that by keeping track of what the last one was, so that next time around the loop, mm-hmm. we don't pick that one. And we're not there yet. It's a little more complex. We'll get kind of close to tracking things like that next week, I think, with the buttons. Oh. But yeah, basically what you would do is keep generating a random one until it's not equal to the previous one. Okay. So you generate one, you'd save it in a new variable, and the next time around you'd check and make sure it's not the same value. So that's the way to get like a different one each time. So, but this is the simple way to choose a random LED and turn it on. That makes sense.
I think we had 3 blue in a row just now.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yep. Awesome. And then our 4th set of code is the Larson scanner.
Yeah. Are you?
Nope. Not familiar.
That's my first question.
I know.
All right. For the old people and nerds out there, I guess. Glenn A. Larson was a TV producer back in the 70s and 80s. He did shows like Battlestar Galactica and Knight Rider, both of which featured like the scanning LED thing. Oh, look, the large microbit was actually there. And it was a kind of sci-fi, high-techy sort of looking thing. So this is our version of a Larson scanner using 4 LEDs and the bit board.
Awesome.
Yeah. So again, you've got everything's the same there. Here's our code. This kind of talks about the code. Let's look at our code here. All right. Same thing here. We turn off that LED matrix. We set our pause time. Ooh, I'll throw this out. This is one thing. So this is a comment in the code. You'll see there's a little sort of like a little mark right there. If you click on that, you'll get this little thing like Post-it note, and you can type in whatever you want there. So if you want to leave notes to yourself on any parts of the code, you can do that. And you can click that little triangle, it'll go away. You can hit the trash can, it'll get rid of it. But as you write more and more complex code, comments can be very handy to help you remember, what was I doing here? What was I thinking? What is this supposed to do? So this one is fairly simple. It's just weird to kind of look at, I think. So the first thing we're going to do here is, so we start like this. The first thing we do is we turn off pin 2, which when you power on the MicroBit, it's already off, but we'll get to that. So what we're going to do then is turn that off. It's already off. We're going to turn on number 1. We're going to wait a quarter of a second, and then we're going to turn it off. At the same time we turn it off, we're going to turn on pin 2, and so on and so forth. So they work basically in pairs, where every time we turn one off, we're going to turn on the one next to it. Now when we get up to pin 4 here and we turn that one on, we're going to go back in the other direction. So now we're going to turn pin 4 off and turn pin 3 on. And again, we pause and we get to pin 3, we turn that off, and then pin 2, and we turn that on. Now here's where it looks like it ends, but if you remember, we go right back up to the top. And here's where it makes sense that we're turning off pin 2, because the last thing we did at the end of the loop was turn it on. So,
awesome.
That's pretty simple, right? And it goes back and forth.
It makes sense.
You can change that pause time to make it go really fast. You could add that random in there to like generate a random delay pause time, and then it would go at all different speeds. There's all sorts of different options. Anywhere basically you see a number in here, you can type in some other number, and that's for the pause time. For this zeros and ones, which again is off and on, you can't really type in any number there, and you can try it and see what happens.
So truthfully, you could, okay, let's see if I think I've got this. You could take your forever block and put in a repeat section to do this a couple times, and then a random. Yeah, you could. Like it's almost like the thinking time and like what's going to happen, right? That's and then perfect. There's your random.
Yeah, you could say repeat 10 times
right.
or whatever, and then it would drop out of that and it would generate a new number and then do it that number.
Because then the Larson scanner time is the time that they have to think to come up with their answer, and bam.
You got it.
Yeah.
That
awesome.
Is it.
Very cool. So those are our MicroBit University 4 LED guides. So you can see those all on the screen there. So that's chapter 3 with 4 LEDs. Next week, we're going to be doing buttons, right? I know we talked a little bit about how you wanted to break it down. So what were we going to do next week? I forgot already.
I'm working on it right now. I'll give you a sneak peek. We start with one button. We're going to look at the difference between sort of holding it down versus just giving it a press, and then toggling. So having it be like when you press it, it does a thing, and it does that thing until you press it again. Am I explaining that well?
Awesome.
Anyway, and there may be one more. I'm working on maybe one more. So I'm going to say 3, maybe 4.
Perfect.
Lesson, like examples like this again. So,
using one LED and a button.
Yeah, we'll use an LED to light it up, because otherwise you're pressing a button and something has to happen.
Right.
So,
we have to actually make something happen when we press the button.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Wonderful. So remember, this is our MicroBit University. You can find that on browndoggadgets.com. Also, if you have not followed us on our social media platforms, please do so. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, and YouTube. If you have any questions after this live stream, you can email us at help@browndoggadgets.com. And please do not forget to go and sign up for Pathfinders. It is such a great opportunity for public and charter educators in the United States. It is a free 40-hour professional development. We give you actually a big old box of materials as well. So you'll get a rover, you get 2 microbits. I said it's free, Joshua. He just wants you to know. And it's free.
He may have said that a while ago.
It's okay. I like it. So please go check that out. It is an amazing opportunity for educators. It gets funded by the Infosys Foundation, so they actually pay for your scholarship. So it's not us wheeling and dealing and scheming under the table. They pay us. They pay us, you get it for free. So everyone wins. Yeah. So check that out. You can go to p2url.com/pathfinders. You can also Google Pathfinders Summer Institute 2025. And you can find it that way. Make sure you scroll over in that carousel to find our actual little, icon. And sign up for us, robotics, with Lego and MicroBit.
And it is a /. Just so we're clear.
Is that a /?
Yeah, it is.
Just making my life tricky, Pete.
Sorry, it's one of those things I can't let go.
I know. I understand. Maybe next time I'll say it correctly. We'll
or wrong, and I'll just be
You'll
over
just
here
correct me again. Or you won't say anything. Yeah, we'll see.
No, there's no
next week on Tuesday we will be doing our pie. It is a
pie.
It is a pie with
pie.
the pi math symbol on it.
Oh,
it vibrates around on the table. Pretty cute. It's a good paper circuits project or origami circuits project. So we'll be doing that in celebration of Pi Day coming up. And then we have our troll robot buddy for St. Patrick's Day on Wednesday. Yeah. And more MicroBit University on Thursday. We hope you join us. Otherwise, have a great night.
All right.